You set this career goal for yourself, and when you achieve it, it feels good because you have achieved a goal. It doesn't necessarily mean that that goal was the right one for you to achieve. And that is what happened to me. One of the first things that you can try to do is is not ignoring what you're feeling, which I see many people doing. And what I did for many years is kind of ignoring these inklings, these whispers you're feeling in your head. Part of it is also not feeling like everything you've done up to this point is for nothing. That there's probably something in everybody's toolkit of experiences that will be relevant in some way. I wouldn't discount what you've done before. I would take a close look at it and see what you can carry forward and what you feel could still be relevant. If people look hard enough, they'll find something.
That's what today's guest, Joseph Liu, has learned through his own reinventions and from more than 100 others. He learned that change rarely happens in one bold moment. What we often see around us is often the outcome of many different stages. In the last episode, we explored our identity beyond our job title. Today, we dive into what happens when you start noticing that something in your life may need to change and what comes next. Welcome to Mindblend. I'm your host, Karen Chong. In each episode, I talk with people who have experienced something real, and we break down what made a difference, so you can see yourself and the world around you more clearly, spot what you might have been missing, and move through life with a clearer way forward. If you like what you're hearing, share with those around you and subscribe to Mindblend. You will help a lot in spreading the insights for anyone who can use them. Let's blend. So my guest today is Joseph Liu. Joseph is a professional speaker, career consultant, writer, and the host of a podcast called Career Relaunch. Having gone through a few reinventions himself, he is now dedicated to helping people relaunch their careers to pursue more meaningful work. Hi, Joseph. Welcome to Mindblend.
Hello, Karen, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Me too. Now, I have to ask you about your own reinventions, because it's not just this happened, I changed, I became this. It's a little bit more dramatic than that. Can you share a little bit about your journey that led you here today?
Sure. Well, as we were chatting before we started recording, I'm originally from the United States. I am Taiwanese American. I grew up in the Midwest, and for most of my childhood, I thought that I wanted to become a doctor. And part of that was probably driven by the Asian immigrant mentality that maybe you can relate to. And I think part of it was just, frankly, I was really interested in science and the medical sciences. I was always fascinated by the body, and I always actually enjoyed being a patient.
You enjoyed being a patient?
Yeah, I thought it was always interesting what the doctors did. I was one of those people who wanted to know why they were drawing blood and what exactly they were doing and what that particular tool or instrument was for. Even to this day, I had blood drawn the other day, and I was asking them about a particular metric on their blood pressure monitor. So I've always just been personally interested in medicine, but I feel that personal interest doesn't always equate to what will be a good profession for you, which is what happened to me. So I eventually went to the Georgetown School of Medicine after studying the pre-medical sciences at Northwestern University. And then after being at the Georgetown School of Medicine for only a few days, I realized it wasn't for me. It just kind of hit me pretty hard over the head when I got there that this was the wrong choice for me.
Wow.
So yeah, after a couple of weeks, and I do mean literally 2 weeks, I dropped out of the program. And I went on my first personal journey of reinvention, which started with me trying to pick up the pieces from what I thought was going to be my career to trying to figure out what could be my career instead. I ended up working in health policy consulting, eventually spent the next decade or so working in consumer goods brand marketing. And I'd suppose the second major change for me was a geographical move, which I know both of us have gone through. I moved from San Francisco to London, just as you have recently, which was actually quite an upending, disruptive turning point in my career. And then about 13 years ago, in 2013, I left my corporate brand marketing job behind, working for a stable organization, General Mills, working on the Haagen-Dazs global communications team in London. And then I branched off to start my own career consultancy focused on career transition topics. So those are the three personal major turning points that I've gone through in my own career.
Hmm. Those are quite dramatic. Well, let's start with going to med school and deciding that it's not for you. Because I'm sure a lot of people don't think about that. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to be a doctor, did the pre-med, and they don't think about whether or not it's really for me.
Yeah.
Because if I were in your shoes, I would be so stoked that I got in. I'm gonna do that, and like I'm ready. I'm ready
Yeah.
to be a doctor. What struck you?
Well, so first of all, I felt all those things, Karen, when I
Hmm.
got into medical school, and getting into medical school is an endeavor. Like, that is an
Yeah,
undertaking. We're
yeah.
talking about years of studies, not only in university, but also in high school, studying the pre-medical sciences, biology, physics, chemistry.
Hmm.
These are tough subjects. I had my head down in my books at Northwestern, and I had a very clear, singular goal of getting to medical school. You have to take a very long, day-long exam, the medical school examination, go through the interview process. And so when I got into Georgetown, I was actually really happy because I felt
Yeah.
like I'd achieved this goal. And what can happen when I talk to clients, they experience the same thing, is you set this career goal for yourself. And when you achieve it, it feels good because you have achieved a goal. It doesn't necessarily mean that that goal was the right one for you to achieve.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that is what happened to me. So when I got to medical school, what happened was I just, perhaps by being immersed in it in a way that I hadn't been before, I started to realize that this was just not for me. I felt like it was very robotic, a lot of memorization. Even the students around me, I felt, were not my tribe. It was interesting. Like, when I
Hmm.
went through the pre-medical studies at Northwestern, I felt like I was surrounded by a lot of students who I kind of clicked
Hmm.
with. But
Hmm.
then when I got to medical school, I felt like the level of intensity and the level of drive was a bit misaligned with who I was. And
Hmm.
I felt like, I suppose what really did it for me was I felt like I had to shut down parts of myself in order to survive in that environment. And that was not a great feeling. And
Wow.
that's ultimately probably the common thread that was part of every career change. Just
Hmm.
realizing that I'm having to close off parts of who I am in order to survive in that environment. And that is, for me, a tipping point.
Hmm. Well, it's good that you realize that, because I can't imagine how many of us have parts of us shut down every day
Uh-huh.
because we're in the kind of work that we're in, or you can't pursue your passions, or you have to pursue this instead. Have you ever thought about the investment side of things? Because a lot of
Oh,
the
yeah.
time we are afraid to change because, oh, I've
Yeah.
already invested so much in this. If I give up, I would have wasted this much money, how many years of my life, etc. So they just stuck with it. Has that
Yep.
come across your mind?
Absolutely, Karen. This is actually one of the three things I talked about in my TED Talk, which I gave many years ago, on reshaping the story of your career. And one of the dynamics I talked about with career change is managing the investment piece.
Mm.
And I'm not even talking about the investment of necessarily money, which I think is what people think of when they use that term investment. But we're talking, I think, here more about the investment of energy and time and effort and belief. And one of the major decisions I think anybody has to make, which I had to make in this situation, was, do I cut my losses or do I finish what I started? And the general tendency is to finish what you start,
Hmm.
because there's all sorts of reasons for that. I suppose it's nice to feel like you have closure. It's nice to finish a journey that you started.
Yeah.
There's always this feeling of not wanting to give up. There's always the idea of not coming this far just to come this far. And
Hmm.
so the investment piece is probably the number one challenge that I struggled with when letting go of the medical school idea. And it's probably why I didn't let go of it earlier, because every year
Hmm.
I invested into it was another year that I felt like I'd have to let go of later. And so I think, at least subconsciously, the more you invest into something, the harder it is to let go of it. And
Hmm.
that shows up in careers, it shows up in relationships and marriages. The investment piece, letting
Hmm.
go, And moving on is harder than holding on in general. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it's a major challenge. And it was for me, certainly.
Uh-huh. Because holding on, you're continuing your current
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. That's the most natural thing to do, is to hold on to what you work for. Yeah.
It's a little bit less of a barrier. Now, let's talk about the people you have talked to. So you
Mhm.
on your podcast, you interview people who are
Yep.
changing course or have changed course, and you, as a profession, help people find different kind of work, more meaningful work. What
Uh-huh.
is some common things that you notice for the people who are contemplating changing work?
Yeah. It's funny, I was just kind of, before this conversation, I was just scanning through some of the former people who I have had on the show, and I've had different types of people on my show. I've now interviewed over 100 people from over 20 countries around the world, and
Mhm,
these are people who all vary in terms of their backgrounds and their
mhm,
level of experience, their sectors, their jobs, their companies,
mhm,
and whether they are uh, teacher who has become an artist, or an opera singer who's become a consultant, or a uh, designer who's become a founder. I've had somebody who was an army officer, is now working in the tech sector, recently on the show. One of the common themes that I see coming up is exactly what we're talking about, is the idea that moving on is typically not a straightforward journey, and that there's not really this overnight success phenomenon that we perhaps perceive is out there. That people
mhm,
don't just suddenly quit and move on and everything just works out. I think most of the time people are struggling with the decision to move on. They're struggling with the transition, and then they're also struggling to then reestablish themselves in their new professions and rebuild their reputations. So the reason why I'm not trying to be negative, but the reason why I start on the challenge piece is that sometimes people won't pursue a career change because they think it's going to be too complicated or too messy, and that is just par for the course. And if you can embrace the idea that this will be messy, it will probably take longer than I think it's going to take, but that ultimately, another theme I've noticed is that most of these people, when they've gone through that messy journey, they've found that it's absolutely worth it.
mm,
Coming out on
mhm,
the other end, yes, it's a messy upheaval, but if you are driven by the idea that you're pursuing work that you find more meaningful, when you come out the other end, in most of these cases, people, like, they couldn't imagine not making this decision now. And
mm, yeah,
yeah, although it's tough when you're in it, when you come out the other side, it's absolutely worth the effort.
mhm,
And yeah, those are a couple things that come to mind.
yeah. It's interesting that it's the same no matter where they're from.
Yeah,
Like, you would think culture would be a big piece of that. Not every culture is fully embracing reinvention like other cultures.
right.
And so, after all, at the end of the day, we're all human, I guess.
We
Our
are. Yeah,
feelings work the same, our brains work the same, our
yeah.
natural brain work the same. What surprised you the most when you're talking to all these different people?
Well, what surprised me the most is that, well, first of all, I'll start off by saying I'm a planner. When you think about the continuum of people out there, there's sort of, if you look at the extremes, there's people who are, they just kind of ad
Spontaneous.
lib. Yeah, they're very spontaneous. They make things up as they go. They book hotels when they get to their destination.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am not. I'm not that kind of a guy. Like, I
Mhm,
like to have a plan. I like to have things mapped out. I
mhm,
like to have a contingency plan. And I suppose what surprised me, both personally and also professionally, is that most of these people who I tend to cross paths with they tend to be more like corporate folks. So these are
mhm,
people who are in established white collar
mhm,
jobs. And so I think there's a tendency for these types of individuals, and I'm broadly generalizing, to err on the side of wanting to have a plan before they make a move.
mhm,
What I've found is quite surprising is that the people who have gotten the farthest the most quickly are not the people who have it all fully mapped out, but that they were just willing to take a brave, imperfect step in broadly the right direction that they think
mhm.
could be better for them. And they just tested it out. So now, not everybody has the luxury of being able to just like quit their job and walk away from it and move on to something else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very important
Yeah,
point.
but some of these people, what they would do is that they'll just kinda dabble on the side. So they'll take up a side project while they're maintaining their full-time job. And it's not because they think it's necessarily going to amount to anything, but it just the action erring on the side of action actually provided them with more clues on where to take their career. Where I find that people get stuck is when they're almost trying to map out the perfect next move or trying to figure out exactly what they wanna do next, and they never end up making a move. So I've been surprised at how much imperfect small steps trump trying to make the perfect in one fell swoop leap.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a kind of successive imperfect steps in broadly the right direction tend to get people where they want to go.
Yeah, because the world doesn't operate around you. There
That's right.
are
Yeah.
other circumstances, other people, so nothing is really going to work out just the way you mapped it out.
Right.
I had
Yeah.
a similar experience, like, after college, because I think growing up, I have always just been, "Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna do this, and everything will fall into place." So kind of have my life sort of mapped out in my head. And then
Uh-huh.
after college, there was economic issues, couldn't find
Mm.
a job, and I was like, "What's the point?" Like, I have planned all my life to get a good job after graduating from a good school.
Yeah.
That's when I sort of changed my life view and my world view. And then after
Uh-huh.
that, I've sort of started to be a little bit more like, okay, I'll just take a step towards that general direction. I'll figure it out as I go. And that has
Mhm.
brought me to like all these different countries, Japan, Hong Kong,
Yeah.
US, and now in London.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, especially with international moves, and I've had
Mhm.
people on my show who have made international moves, and a lot of times it's really hard to map that out fully, and people end up living in countries they would have never imagined that they were gonna
Mhm.
land in,
Mhm.
but they end up in a place that brings them a little bit more joy in their career and more
Mhm.
fulfillment.
Mhm. Yeah. Being willing and having the courage to take that first step is difficult.
Yeah.
Because as human, uncertainty is uncomfortable. Uncomfortableness is a threat. So naturally, our natural instincts want to protect us.
Yes.
And everything you see around you, success stories, people showing what they did on Instagram or on LinkedIn, just
Yeah.
makes you feel like, what, like, why is it not working out for me? But I
Yeah.
think that's what we don't realize that people are not gonna show you while they're doing it. They
Right.
show you when it's all done and dusted and they have come out the other end.
Yeah.
But there's before, during, and after.
That's right. And
Mhm,
so often we see the before and after, but we don't see the during. And
mhm,
that during piece is actually what will make or break you. And I mean, I used to think that these people out there who make career changes, they somehow had the confidence to make the bold leap. But as you alluded to, I have found that it's less about confidence and it's a little bit more about courage
mm,
and being able to somehow get to a point where you do the thing that you're trying to do, even though you're scared of it, you'll still do it. And
mhm,
that I guess is the definition of courage is doing something in spite of your fears. And if you can amass the courage to take a small leap, then you start to build the confidence knowing that, hey, I'm okay with this. Like I dropped out of medical school. That was a horrible moment in my life. And I felt like a total failure, but I'm still here. And you realize that you can weather the storm, and then that builds your muscle around being able to perhaps make another change in the future. And so I think I don't know that I would have been as comfortable moving from San Francisco to London had I not been through that really rocky
mhm,
upheaval post medical school or leaving
mhm,
the corporate world to start my own business. I don't know that I would have had the confidence, enough confidence to do that had I not taken those initial scary steps that were pretty unpleasant at the
mhm.
time.
What helped you the most throughout all these uncomfortable next steps?
Generally, the people around me, I can
Oh,
think
okay.
of individuals who, and I know that there's also like, there's obviously there's the practical component of, I haven't talked as much about that. There's the practical component of reworking your CV and getting the right visa if you want to move countries, or
Mhm.
like the logistics of navigating a career change, cover letter, interviewing. There is all that, which is important. I see that as the executional part of it, but the other part of it is the emotional part, which is probably what tends to stop people more. That's certainly what stopped
Mhm.
me. And during these moments when I was trying to make a change, I can think of specific individuals who were very supportive of me during those changes. So, for example, when I left medical school, I remember calling up one of my best friends from Northwestern. His name is Hitesh. I'm actually going to be seeing him next month in Chicago. And he was just a really great sounding board for me during that time. Or my friend Kem, also from Northwestern, great, who's now based just outside of Portland. Just a great supportive soundboard that was not judgmental about what I was thinking
Mhm.
about doing. Um, Even my parents, who, in spite of the fact that they're immigrant Asian Taiwanese, moved to the United States so that probably I could become a doctor, they were quite support. They were surprisingly supportive of my decision to leave medical school, and they could see how much, I guess, emotional damage it was doing to me.
Wow.
And as
Mhm.
somebody myself who's now a parent, I like the last thing you want to see is your child in any sort of pain. And so I feel like they were very understanding of my decision to leave. Um, when I even was thinking about applying to business school and shifting gears and going toward marketing instead, that guy named Yogan Patel, who is somebody I met in Washington, D.C. when I worked in health policy, he was really encouraging to me and really encouraged me to, hey, like, you should apply to business school and you should do this now. Like, don't delay this. When I thought about moving to the UK, a guy named Aaron Harris from business school, he helped um, me amass the courage to make that move. And so at each one of these pivots, there's been, I mean, my wife, when I was thinking about leaving the corporate world to start my own business, we had just gotten married, and she was very supportive of the idea. So I do feel like it's useful to have supportive people around you when you're trying to make
Mhm.
these sort of changes, so you don't feel like you're completely crazy. And
Or
yeah, no,
I'm
myself.
in it myself. Like,
Uh,
ultimately, yes, you are responsible for your own next step and your next move, but having a supportive tribe,
yeah,
really, it's invaluable to have
yeah,
supportive
it really
people.
is.
Yeah, it would not have been successful either for throughout all of my moves if I didn't have supportive people, or at least people who don't tell you just the, "Have you thought about this? This could be the consequences." Remind you of the sunk cost that you have
Yeah.
invested in.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at those moments, it's really important. This is something I share with clients, is it's really important to surround yourself with people who either have a philosophy that you really appreciate, or are doing the kind of thing that you want to do, or have a life and career that you would like your life and career to look like. What can happen is we tend to talk to the people who are in our current circumstances. So, like, fellow
Mm,
colleagues at our
mhm.
current
Yeah.
company. And if you talk to those people and you're thinking about making a move, well, they're not going to be completely objective about
Mhm.
what they think is best for you, because they're in the same situation that you're in. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's important to curate the right. I'm not saying don't take counter points of view, or don't connect with people who are skeptical of what you're trying to do. I think that's very useful also, but it is also important to find people who are supportive of what
Mhm.
you deep down know is right for you, and you just needing a little bit of help getting over the hump.
Mhm. A lot of your moves and a lot of other your clients or your guests on your podcast, they feel something and they acted on it. How do we get to the feeling something part? Because a lot of us we just go by our day-to-day life. We don't really think about things like that. What does someone need to do to at least try to be true to themselves, to align themselves, align the work that they're doing?
Well, the I can very much relate to this, Karen. 'Cause again, because I'm a planner, I would also characterize myself as a very left-brained, kind of
Mhm,
logical individual. I tend
mhm,
not to focus as much on, well, I did, well, I say this, I didn't used to focus as much on, like, emotions and feelings and kind of the touchy-feely side of
mhm,
myself and other circumstances. Um, Over the years, I have found that paying attention to your emotions matters a lot. in these situations. So to answer your question, one of the first things that you can try to do is just to pay attention to how you're feeling. And
Mm.
I know that can feel really soft. It's not very, that's a very vague
Mhm.
response, but in other words, not ignoring what you're feeling, which is which I see many
Mm.
people doing, and what I did for many years, is kind of ignoring these inklings, these whispers you're feeling in your head. Okay, so when I was working in uh, these like biochemistry labs or school of pharmacology during my summers as a college student, I probably should have paid more attention to the fact that I was like falling asleep and I was really drained at the end of the day and I was really bored and I wasn't interested. Like
Mhm.
I just chose to ignore it. So
Mhm.
part of it is just not ignoring what you're feeling and paying attention to what your body is
Mhm.
telling you. Your body can be quite wise. And if you feel like you're drained at the end of every day, and if you feel like you're not a very pleasant person to be around, and if you feel like your health is falling apart and your relationships are not what they used to be, and you just don't feel great, that's something you should probably pay attention to and to not
Mhm.
ignore it. And
Mhm.
if you're not feeling at least somewhat energized by your work, that is a red flag in my mind. And again, not everybody has the luxury of being able to just walk away from a job that they don't like. Most people are not. Most people don't have that luxury. But I think it's useful to pay attention to how you're feeling, how pay attention to what other people might be saying about how you've been acting recently, as
Mhm.
me
Mhm.
saying that I wasn't a very pleasant person to be around when I was working in corporate marketing. I just was just not a fun person to be around because I didn't feel like
Uh-huh.
myself. And so, yeah, I would pay attention. I would give yourself permission to pay attention to the fact that you may not be feeling as good as you could be feeling, and
Mhm.
take it seriously and to not wait for something really bad to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish someone has reminded me that falling asleep through the classes,
Yeah,
that
it's
is
a
probably
sign.
what not not what I should be pursuing. It's funny that you brought that up because there were only 2 classes, like 2 kinds of classes I didn't fall asleep at once. Japanese class and
Uh-huh.
marketing class.
Okay.
Those were the only 2 that I didn't fall asleep. I slept through everything else. And it was a sign.
Yeah,
I was in a lot of marketing agencies line of work,
I saw that, yeah.
and I like, my study in Japanese was the reason why I went to Japan. So,
Uh-huh.
those were the things that I acted on.
I think that's the way to go. I think that's
Mhm.
the way to go, and if everybody out there was able to do that and did do that, we would certainly have more people who loved their jobs out there,
Mhm.
which isn't probably the case right now, but yeah, it's not always, it sounds so straightforward, Karen, to just do that. It's just like, well, just pay attention to what you like and just pursue that. And I think there's so many other factors that tend to come up, whether it's like financial or societal or familial or social pressures that lead us down different paths. What we
Mhm.
think we should be doing versus what we want to do.
Mhm.
It's complicated. Careers are complicated.
Yeah, and we talked about, like, executional side of things, and
Hmm.
then we talked about the feeling side of things, and you just mentioned societal pressure. There's a
Uh-huh.
lot of societal pressure now. A lot of people are still struggling to find their new job or the next gig because they were laid off.
Uh-huh.
It could have been a couple of years ago. They are struggling to find jobs because companies are hiring differently. AI is on the surface replacing a lot of the roles that are needed or
Mhm.
requiring a completely different skill set. Now, I don't know if you have had clients who fall into this group of, okay, everything that I have worked through my life to bring me to this point is now like crumbling.
Yeah.
What do I do? There are a lot of people who are in this boat.
Yeah, there are. I was just reading a stat before I came on. I'll just read this off. World Economic Forum's, this is from 2025. The 2025 Future of Jobs report, workers can expect 39% of their existing core skill set to be transformed or become outdated over the 2025 to 2030 period. And there's all sorts of reports out there about that. BCG has said between 2027 and 2029, over half of jobs in the US will be reshaped by AI. Uh, you've got so many people out there right now who are having their jobs upended. I have had clients and people who join my workshops who have said they've been made redundant because their job's been eliminated,
Mhm.
probably because of AI
Mhm.
efficiencies that have been discovered in their organizations. And so we're about to enter a time when people will go through perhaps some voluntary career changes, but certainly a lot of involuntary career changes. And the onus will be on each of us to try to remain current, to remain relevant, to remain
Mhm.
valuable, and to figure out a way to position ourselves so that all of our former experiences aren't for nothing,
Mhm.
but to perhaps hone in on those that we feel we can carry forward into the future. Part of that might be upskilling, part of that might be reskilling, but I do think that part of it is also not feeling like everything you've done up to this point is for nothing. There's
Mhm.
probably something in everybody's toolkit of experiences that will be relevant in some way in their next role. That I see consistently. I mean, we talk about the people who've been on my show. Nearly every one of them has said that, wow, I was really surprised how much my former experience, which I felt would have nothing to do with what I'm doing right now, has reemerged as my point of advantage, or what makes me unique, or what gives me some unique value on the team. So I wouldn't discount what you've done before. I would take a close look at it and see what you can carry forward and what you feel could still be relevant. And I'll bet if people look hard enough, they'll find something.
Mhm. Yeah, I am a strong believer as well. There's value in all kinds of jobs. If you
Yeah.
pick the right thing, you carry forward. Like me, I've done I've taught English, I have been a barista, I've been like a
Nice.
barista trainer, and then like project manager. So are the big categories of jobs I've done. Yeah,
Yeah.
the barista and teaching English helped me learn how to handle clients, because
Yeah.
customers or clients are both clients. And having worked in like agency, I know how you can be nimble, how you can get things done, because that's very different from corporate. You have to go through 5 departments just to get a file, for example.
Uh-huh.
And also having done corporate jobs, I can help my agency colleagues see, okay, you can't just send this to them because they're going to have to send it to 5 other people. You need to
Yeah.
make it presentable, and they need to be able to just send that. So, yeah, like
Yeah.
everything, you make the best of your experience. If you
Right.
focus on the negative, it will only be negative.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I'm really trying to remind myself of this right now with everything that I do and the things that I talk about with audiences and clients. Is just every opportunity you have, every experience you have is an opportunity to learn something. And if you allow yourself to learn something from that experience, then it will almost certainly be helpful to you in the future. And I mean, it's funny you mentioned the barista thing. We just got
Were you a barista too?
well, no, I wasn't. We were just talking with our daughter this morning about we just asking her, "Hey, do you want to be the barista for the house?" Because we have an espresso
Mhm.
machine at home, but we've decided to move to like a more complicated setup, which with like a grinder and an actual
Yeah,
espresso machine
yeah.
and like tamping down ground up bean. And I just think it's that sort of experience of being a barista in a coffee shop. I think there's so much you can learn from that.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
the idea of not only just making the coffee, but as you mentioned, like dealing with the customers, being able to move quickly, being able to deal with high pressure environments. And so it's everything's a learning experience out there.
Mhm. Yeah, and like you said, like, paying attention to your feelings is also
Mhm.
very important. As much as I enjoyed doing things with coffee, because I have been interested in coffee since I was really little, I also didn't feel like myself
Mm.
afterwards. Like,
Mhm.
I guess my brain works better than my hands, so that's
Okay.
why eventually I moved back to being a knowledge worker rather
Yeah.
than operation, something to do with my hands.
I can totally relate to that. I think that's a learning, right? Like that's if you go through an experience and it's not quite right for you, you then figure out what might be more right for you next time. And I mean, I waited tables one night in Honolulu, Hawaii when I lived there, and I only lasted one night. And I thought, you know what?
Wow.
This is not for me. I cannot.
Mhm.
This is too much for me. I cannot handle
Mhm,
this.
mhm.
So, yeah, it's a different kind of work when you're
Yeah.
servicing customers in a high pressure, fast paced environment like that.
hmm Now, it's a fine line between this is not for me and having an open mind to be in something long enough to get through the difficult beginning steps.
Yeah.
Like, how do we balance that?
That's so tough. I feel like therein lies the challenge, Karen. And I hear this question a lot is how do I know the difference between me just going through the growing pains of the learning curve involved with any new role versus this perhaps being a misfit for who I am? And how can you differentiate
Yeah.
between the two?
hmm
And that's a tough one. I wish I had a clear answer on this. What I have noticed is that, again, this kind of goes back to energy, is even if you're in a role that maybe you're not, like, you don't love it. And most of us who are in roles for the first time, we're struggling with like just figuring stuff out, new systems and new processes, new technical skills. And the learning process is rarely loads of fun. but but if you find the process of learning something at least a little bit energizing, that I feel is a sign that you're just going through the initial learning curve. If you're going through that initial few weeks or few months and you feel like, well, this is miserable, like I dread every single day of this, that's perhaps a problem. But
Yeah.
I do think that there are also, what's important to also realize is that there's different seasons in your career. And so when you're somebody who is perhaps, and again, I'm going to broadly generalize here, but if you're a fresh graduate coming out of university and you're in your 20s and you're in your first entry level role, you're probably going to have to go through some sludge and you're probably going to have to put your time in before you get to do more interesting projects. That is just life. And
hmm
being able to accept that is also really important, and understanding that perhaps this is the season where I'm having to invest a lot and go through the grind and learn the ropes. And I don't know, it can be something as demeaning as having to bring coffees to people, like whatever
Yeah.
it is, like
hmm
that's just, you got to do that for a while.
hmm
And understanding that that's part of the journey of anybody's career.
hmm
But noticing the difference between that and, hey, like I hate my life every day. I really dread this. I
hmm
dread going into the office. I don't feel like I'm similar to anybody around me. I don't admire any individual who is working on my team or above me. Those are the sorts of things that I feel are more like red flags, where you feel like you're
hmm
completely misplaced.
hmm
That,
Yeah.
yeah, and how you tell the difference, I do think comes down to trusting yourself and trusting your intuition. And if you feel like something is radically off, something's probably off.
hmm
If you feel like, you know what, this is tough, but this is what most people have to go through. I I want to get to the end of this so that I can do the next thing, then I would do it. I would stick
hmm
with it.
hmm So it could be just noticing if there's anything positive.
Yeah.
If there's
Right.
anything positive, maybe stick around for a little more
Yeah.
just to
Like I
see.
think if I take myself as an example, if I was working as a senior, I even forget my title now, senior brand manager on the global communications team at Haagen-Dazs. Now, if I had looked above me and I thought, you know, I really want to become a marketing manager, I really want to be marketing director for this global division. That is something I am aspiring to do. That appeals to me. I'm excited about that. Yeah, I don't love my job right now, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because that's what the end goal is. Then I would have probably stuck with it. But that wasn't my feeling. That I
Mm,
when I looked at my manager's role, that was not something that I felt was what I wanted for my life. And
mm,
so that's when I decided to depart.
yeah. Yeah. When you are really energized, you know it. Like I remember joining
Yeah.
companies and the first day I'm like, I want to work here forever.
Yeah.
That's a sign that I should stick around. And those were the longest stints I've done in my
Mhm.
life.
Yeah. You
Mm,
can generally tell what's really surprising. Going back to the surprising, you asked a question about what's surprising is most people I talk to, they could kind of tell. Like if you ask them to go back and audit their experience, they'll say, you know what,
mhm,
I could kind of tell that I wasn't going to be happy here. Or, you know
mhm,
what, I could kind of tell that this was going to be a really great fit for me. And I knew
mhm,
that within a few days. It wasn't like
mhm,
a few months. Like they
mhm,
could ascertain that quite quickly.
mhm,
So I've I really feel like intuition is, this is not my specialty, but I do feel like intuition is a really powerful tool that each of us has if we allow ourselves to trust our intuition. And
Mm-hmm.
what I struggle with is sometimes I'll kind of overwrite that, or I'll try to uh, trump that intuition with my own logic of trying to convince myself that that initial feeling I had was probably off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's better to kind of sometimes just go with your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's coming from somebody like me. I don't tend to operate that way, but I've actually found over the years that maybe as I get older that trusting your gut feelings can get you pretty far and can help you make the right choices for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just because deep down you know you the best.
Yeah.
So if you
It's
feel
hard to
like
trick yourself.
something, yeah, if you feel like something may be off, at least start evaluating. I guess
Yeah.
that's the biggest takeaway. There isn't one answer to what should you do so that you can reinvent yourself, or
Right.
do we even need reinvention? We don't know,
Right.
but by
Right.
asking ourselves, we can at least start to see, like maybe be more aware of certain signs. Or I feel like by asking that, you are more open to
Yeah.
opportunities that come your way.
Absolutely. And you also don't have to feel like you've got to make a huge monumental change in order to fix whatever issue
Yeah,
you might be struggling with. There might be a
that's
really small tweak
mhm,
that could
mhm,
make a
mhm.
massive difference. You don't
Yeah,
have to take massive action to create a positive difference in your life.
that's a really important point. Because when we think reinvention, we think quit my job, go to the other side of the world,
Right.
do something dramatic.
Yes. I
Mhm,
think James Clear said it in his book, Atomic Habits, that we often convince ourselves we have to take massive action in order to achieve massive results. And he may not have said it in his book, but it's something James Clear has talked about. And what can make a bigger difference over time is to take small steps. And over time, those can accumulate into something that will make a meaningful difference to your career and your life.
mhm. Great. Now let's do something with our intuition.
Let's try.
I
Yeah.
have a few rapid fire questions
Oh,
that I
no.
want to
Okay.
ask you
All
as a
right.
way to wrap up our episode.
I'll do
Just
my
quick,
best. Okay.
whatever comes to mind first.
Okay.
All right. What's harder, letting go or starting over?
Letting go is probably going to be harder
Hmm.
than starting over. They're related, but letting go is a tough thing to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
because
really
of this thing called sunk costs.
That's right. The sunk cost fallacy. I guess Daniel Kahneman talked about this is we tend to avoid loss and we disproportionately weigh losses over potential gains.
Mhm,
So, which is why letting go and letting go of the investment you've made, that's why that's so tough.
mhm. Okay. Complete the sentence. People wait too long because.
People wait too long because they fear what they're trying to gain may not be as good as what they currently have.
Yeah. Again, letting go.
Mm-hmm.
What's one belief about success you've completely changed your mind about?
Job titles. So sometimes I guess there was a time in my life where I felt like job titles were somehow a reflection of someone's professional value or worth or achievement or accomplishment. And I just don't think that anymore. I have
Mm,
seen plenty of people who have fancy job titles who are absolutely miserable in their
mm,
careers and their lives. And they've got horrible family lives and they're really unhappy. I have seen people who have no job title and they don't know what to call themselves. They're working, but they've got like a portfolio career or whatever. And they're thrilled. Like they are really happy. And so I suppose a related misconception is around money. Yes, you've got to have enough money to survive and to be able to do the things you want to do. Once you get past a certain point, money is probably not as important as job fulfillment.
yeah. And we can, if you look at countries who have the highest income and their happiness, they're not directly proportional.
Yeah, that's
That
right.
that
That's
tells us
exactly right.
for the
Right.
logical people out there, you
That's
can look
right.
at this stat.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But money, you do need to have, I think it is, if you don't have any money and if you're struggling and you're scraping to get by, it's going to be harder to be.
Yeah. You're also not going to be very happy.
Right. Right.
Okay. Next one. What's something you wish someone had told you before your own reinventions?
That it's okay to quit and that you don't really need any sort of grandiose reason or explanation, but it's okay to walk away.
Mm.
Like, it's really okay. You do not have to finish what you started. And there's no shame in saying I've had enough and walking away.
Great. Next one. What's something you are reluctant to reinvent in your daily life? Because we always talk about, oh, let's not reinvent the wheel, like reinventing is bad. What is something that you're still reluctant to reinvent in your everyday life?
Well, you mean like work related or personal or either one?
Personal. Let's take personal. Like something that's not working quite well process wise or whatever, but you're reluctant to change that.
It sort of relates to personal and sort of relates to work, but I'd say that I'm reluctant to change the amount of effort I'm putting into work. It sounds kind of strange, but I sometimes equate effort to outcomes and effort to value. And this might be kind of the Asian part of me, but sometimes I feel a little guilty when I just like take a day off, or I feel a little guilty if I say, you know what, I'm just not gonna publish that next podcast episode as quickly as I said I was going to, or write that next article, or right now I'm working on a book right now, or so yeah. The part I always really struggle with is allowing myself to have some true downtime. And I think it's because I feel like everything's fragile out there, and I don't want to take. I feel quite comfortable right now in my life and my career, and at the same time, I don't want to take it for granted. And so I feel like continuing to work really hard is a sort of my own signal to myself that I'm not taking it for granted. But sometimes I wish I could kind of sit back a little bit and like maybe enjoy the fruits of my labor a little bit more and feel okay with it and not feel so guilty about just taking a week off. And yeah, that's what I always struggle with. It's like a personal hang up of mine. I don't know.
Well, you can ask yourself the next time. Should I take
ask
a
myself
day off?
why that is.
Yeah. Okay. Last one.
Okay.
Finish this sentence. Reinvention begins when?
Reinvention begins when you feel ready to pursue work that you would find truly fulfilling. And that's what it comes down to. It's you have to feel ready for it. And if you're ready to open yourself up to the idea that work doesn't just have to be 9 to 5, 9 to 6 slog where it's just a job and you're just using it to get through the day and to make ends meet. When you open yourself up to the idea that you can have a job and a career that you find truly fulfilling and that it is worth the effort to try to find that, that's when reinvention happens.
What a great way to finish our episode, because a lot of us are in this, I need to reinvent. I need to do something different because the world has changed. Like the world has always been changing. I have to admit that there's many different waves of revolution, technology revolution or whatnot. But the one right now, I think it just hits a lot harder, a lot faster, hitting a lot of people more.
Yeah.
So it's important to be true to yourself and focus on what you can carry forward so you can carry yourself forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for spending time with me today, Joseph.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Karen. I appreciate it.
And if people want to connect with you or get your advice, what's the best way?
They can go to my website. It's josephliu.co. Or if they want to hear stories of career reinvention, since we're talking about the topic of reinvention, they're more than welcome to check out my podcast, which is called Career Relaunch. And they can find all the details about that at careerrelaunch.net.
All right. And don't worry, listeners, you didn't have to write those down. I will also have them in the show note. Connect with us, like keep the conversation going, leave us some comments, and share it with anyone who needs to hear it. But thank you. That was the best kind of like Friday wrap up the week. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mind Blend. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to follow or share it with anyone who needs to hear it, or support me on Patreon. And let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on social media or leave me a comment. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and let's continue to blend our minds and discover what's possible.